see if I get this right. Yep. And everybody got a digital introduction via email to all my class. So I wanted just to thank Jen for joining us today. And I'll stop sharing my screen and let it go to you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to bring up my slides. All right. Well, I'm Jen Hughes. I'm the Employee Success Manager at Systems Engineering. And we are an IT managed services and support provider headquartered in Portland, Maine. We were founded in 1988, and we also have an office in Manchester, New Hampshire. We are a 100% employee-owned company. We became 100% employee-owned in 2007. We have about 165 employees, and we work with over about 500 small to medium-sized businesses nationwide, actually, with the majority of our clients actually in northern New England. The types of businesses that we actually work with are what we consider more operationally mature, so have complex network environments, typically a security focus in their IT, and are really using their business continuity plan to include IT strategy and support. So we have everything under the sun, from full cycle IT services and support, as well as services to augment existing IT teams as well. We are a tier 1 in our class as an MSP, and we work with a variety of technology vendors and manufacturers to deliver our services. So what's really unique about systems engineering, we are employee owned, 100% employee owned. So we have an ESOP, which is an employee stock option plan. And what's really unique about our culture is this, that the ESOP is really the tapestry from which everything else really grows. So we have a really rewarding, collaborative culture. We've been voted one of Maine's best places to work for about 7 years now. Last year, we were in the top 10 of medium-sized employers in our category. And I would say part of our employee-owned culture is we're focusing on customers, culture, and community. It's kind of that triple pillar approach to how we do business. So as our employee success manager, so I've been with systems engineering for just over a year now. I was born and raised in Maine. I moved away for about 17 years and returned back in December 2019 for the Maine quality of life. And I was actually catapulted into my own job search unexpectedly, and really stumbled upon, through some networking and some job search grit, came across this job. And this is a new position for systems engineering. My role focuses on nurturing the employee experience and stewarding our ESOP culture. So I work in the areas of recruitment, onboarding, learning and development, and organizational culture. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. So under employee success, my role is not a human resources role. I work in collaboration with human resources here, but we actually delineated those roles out to be very distinct, to really focus on HR focusing on what they do best, which is really compliance, compensation, benefits, administration, all of that. And then myself and our employee success specialist, we get to work on really the pivotal parts of our culture, which is really the employee experience, everything from candidate recruitment all the way through supporting our hiring managers and succession planning as people retire and everything in between. So part of our role is actually working on our internship program. We do a lot of workforce development partnerships. We work with our hiring managers very closely on the recruitment. We are the first stop for candidates who are applying for jobs with us. We also oversee all of the new hire onboarding. As you can imagine, we've been doing everything remotely. So that's, we had to make that pivot. After about 6 weeks of me being on board at SC, we went remote, and our entire process has been a remote process. And then we really have this strong pillar of learning and development. We are a culture of continuous learning, career growth, and mobility, supporting our workforce in obtaining skills and certifications and training as they progress in their careers. It's something we really value heavily and invest in, both with time and our financial resources. The other part of my job is really focusing on culture. So as you're evaluating careers, I hope workplace culture is on your most important thing list. The ESOP is a huge part. Like I mentioned before, we support with a lot of we are all considered employee owners or future employee owners. There is a financial benefit of staying with an employee-owned company, to have a vested financial stake in the company. But also the flip side of that is, as an ESOP or as an employee owner, everybody's voice is valued in our workplace, and that's a really unique aspect. And we really take on the ethos of, we own it. We have ownership in our business decision making, our our feedback. We are highly collaborative. We're accountable to each other, and we really leave our egos at the door. And so we do a lot around our ESOP to steward that. We also, as an employee-owned company, we donate, we reinvest 10% of our profits every year into the community, whether that's through charitable investment, in-kind IT, or we also have our paid volunteer time off initiatives that we have for employees. And we're really working in our own backyard to make sure that part of our business is doing good business and being a corporate partner in the community with some really great organizations, both here in Maine and New Hampshire. And we have a really strong wellness program. So health and well-being is a big initiative for us as part of our culture. We just got our gold certification as a best wellness employer for 2021, which is another big accomplishment. But we really focus on making sure people's whole person wellness is addressed. We have free health coaching. We have an on-site fitness facility in Portland and New Hampshire for our employees, and we do a variety of initiatives to address physical, mental, emotional, and social well-being here for our staff. So our hiring process is pretty standard, I would say, for the most part. What's unique is that we actually when we post our positions and we start screening applicants, we actually look at every single applicant. And I see some questions that might be coming up in the chat, so I'll take a look at those in just a second. We review every application. You either hear from myself or Andrea, our employee success specialist. We do not put resumes through a tool to grade them on a keyword score. We don't do that. That's part of our equitable hiring practices. After we talk to candidates, we put them in front of our hiring managers, and if they'd like to move forward, we do a first round interview. Of course, right now our entire process is virtual. And then we invite finalists back for what we call our second round shadow and panel. So we do have, most of our roles have a technical job shadow as part of it, whiteboarding, and meeting with some members of the team, some of our leadership, and then human resources. And then we go through our decision-making process for our offers. So our process is really streamlined since I started. And I would say, what's really unique is sometimes it's a no for the role at the moment, but we like to say it's not a no forever. We do a lot of work on, keeping people on file for future roles. We also really pride ourselves on our internship program, which I'm going to talk about. But we really believe in transparency in our process, both for our community partners and for folks going through the process. So there's no, under the radar. You're very clear about what happens in the process as a candidate. And it's just as much about you interviewing us as a potential candidate as it is about us having a conversation with you. And we want to make sure that it's a mutually beneficial experience. So what do we look for? Well, we look for a few things. I keep talking about the ESOP, but one of the big things for us is, will this person really drive our business forward, and will they be a great teammate and co-owner? We look for that passion and curiosity for technology. Obviously, skills and experience. We have technical roles and we have non-technical technical roles. So my role is technically an operations role. I'm not an engineer, but I'm very passionate about technology and IT. So we look for a lot of different things: diversity of professional experience, diversity of background, education, skills, and we really are priding ourselves on bringing in folks who are really strong leaders, and actually can deliver really exceptional customer service. That's part of our mission, in addition to our engineering excellence. And we are constantly working with customers, whether that's internal customers or external customers. And those are really, really big things for us. We also want to really, we want a candidate who has a strong understanding of our business and really has a strong why as to why they want to pursue a career with us. So current opportunities, I just did a screenshot of our careers page. Please check it out. There's a great video on there about our workplace culture. All of our current openings are there. Those automatically funnel to Indeed and Live and Work in Maine. We also post, because we have a New Hampshire location, we post to jobs in New Hampshire as well. And MTUG is another job board that we post to, but the best place to go is our careers page. The other part is our summer internship program. So we offer a full summer internship program. It's a full-time experience. It's 13 weeks typically in the summer, and we have roles in engineering, project management, and business development. And we just closed the applications for this summer, and we will be posting the summer 2022 roles will be posted in December, but you can always go to our internship site on our webpage and be notified of that. But our internship program is a really amazing experience to get some hands-on skill building opportunities as well. So I'm sure there will be some questions. We do not have any fully remote roles. That's one of the questions that come up. We, right now in this environment, we're navigating things day by day, but we have a really cohesive approach to our remote work. We've been doing it successfully. We will not be having roles continue 100% remote. And right now everybody's working remote. So I just want to address that. That question comes up a lot. I would say what we look for in terms of our candidates, I talked about that, but I'm always open to questions. And the other part for me is I'm always available in terms of informational interviews too. And Terry will get my contact information over to you. But there it is. That's it. Questions.
Okay.
I'm gonna pull up the chat.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jen. I appreciate your time and the information. We had one question from one of the capstone students, Abdul Karim. How has the second round job shadow changed with the COVID impacting the way we work?
Yeah, so what we do actually is it's actually been very successful. So we, for instance, our engineering roles, what we do is we have one of our engineers pair up with the candidate for about 60 to 90 minutes, and we do a screen share. And so depending on the role, you might be working through a ticket, you may be working on a break fix solution, you may be asking to whiteboard out a network diagram, but it's all through screen sharing. So it's been very successful. So you're having the experience, the best possible experience without being side by side with an engineer, but it's actually a really, it's still working really, really well. And what we're looking for in that shadow, and I'll use our NOC engineering roles, our Network Operation Center engineers, they're really working on break fix, so tier 2 escalated support, so things that move from our help desk up to our NOC. And what we're really looking for in that job shadow is for you to be able to take a look at a ticket, to really understand the problem, and then to be able to verbally talk to the engineer about what your problem solving approach would be. And that's just really what we're looking for, is to really get an insight into a snapshot into your thinking and your problem solving ability, as well as your technical skills, to say, this is how I would address this. And then this is the messaging I would give to either the technical contact at the customer or to another internal technical staff member. So that's really what we're looking for in that job shadow. But right now we're mainly doing that through a screen share and chat and video collaboration.
So one other question, are you still hiring summer interns for the current upcoming summer?
We are not. We have closed that process. We're actually in the process of extending offers right now to our cohort for this summer. We had over 180 applications, and we had for 5 seats this summer. So right now, no internship roles for this summer are available.
100 applications for 5 seats.
180.
180 applications for 5 seats.
Yeah.
All right. Good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So our next speaker, Jen, if you would mind relinquishing the screen, I'd appreciate it.
Of course.
Our next speaker is Brenton Wilson. Again, I think everybody in the class has received a digital introduction by email. But I also hasten to add that Brent is a black bear, graduated University of Maine. He's a product manager at WEX Incorporated, which is a financial technology firm in Portland, Maine. But he graduated in 2018, and he's a product manager for WEX. So Brent, all yours.
Thank you for the intro, Terry. I'm excited to be here with you guys. It feels like yesterday I was there at the university. So I'm happy to share what's happened since then, and hopefully you guys will have some good questions for me. I will take over the screen here. If I can click buttons, there we go. All right, am I sharing? Can you see my screen all right? I'm not so familiar with Zoom. We use Google Meet at WEX, so I'm less familiar with Zoom. All right, so let's launch into it. I'll give you the 2-minute summary of WEX here. I'm much more of a doer right now, so I won't be able to give as robust of a background as Jen of our hiring process and our company background, but I'll be coming at you as a product manager with some other thoughts in mind. So what is WEX? When we say financial technology, what does that mean? WEX started as a fleet company. That means a fleet card in a driver's hand. They want to purchase gas. And then over time, it evolved beyond just the credit product and turned into some technology offerings. That's interfaces that allow solutions so that people can consume them immediately on their phones, on their computers. That's controls around, oh, we want to restrict how people spend things. You can intercept it. You can say that looks like a fraudulent purchase. Now we're protecting our customers. And we've just been layering and layering on top of those fleet offerings over the years. And then WEX has also done a lot of acquisitions as well. So beyond the fleet space, we've moved into a corporate payments products, which is a fancy, well, it's a way of expressing payments between businesses. So a business to business transaction. One business wants to pay another, but they don't trust each other. So they rely on a middleman. And WEX comes into the picture with technology offerings, a ton. We just have a ton of different solutions because every one of these businesses wants to do this in a different way. So there's hundreds, maybe even thousands of custom solutions that we're tailoring to these clients. And then finally, more recently, well, not most recently, but more recently, we're in the health space now. So for the past 4 years, WEX has been part of a WEX technology platform that's empowering. The interface is a Discovery Benefits is the name of the product, but it's an HSA UI essentially. So an HSA is a health savings account. It's, if you think of your retirement accounts or your 401ks, it's just another investment vehicle. But the HSA was designed as an alternative to high deductible insurance plans. So the HSA lets you take tax deductible cuts from your income and instead pay zero tax and apply that to your health purchases. So that's what the HSA is. And we're just providing a technology solution that allows consumers to track their money, spend their money, distribute it, and track their claims because it's still an insurance product. So those are the biggest areas that WEX plays in. Happy to dive into them more, but just at a high 100-foot view, that's what WEX does. And I'm going to tailor the rest of my presentation to some of the content that Terry shared as some questions of interest. So happy to go back to answering questions about WEX. I think I have a one slide later on about the jobs at WEX, but I'm just going to tackle more directly sort of some of the questions that it sounded like were close, near and dear to your hearts. So one of the questions was, what qualities should a new hire have? And I've got a little disclaimer at the bottom. I've kind of given the information that is for any candidate in any position. Here are some areas that I would focus on, but there's obviously going to be some job specific skills that you're going to need to have. You can't be a senior Go developer if you don't have any experience with Golang. some of those things may seem obvious, but there are cases, I guess, there are edge cases, obviously, where maybe you can toe the line if you've got a lot of technical experience and you know that you have good transferable skills. But I'm not going to address the tech specific experience here, but in general, there's sort of five qualities that I typically look for. And I would say more generally, most people I know that are hiring managers at WEX would look for. So self-starter is number one, and I think beats all the other ones out by a long shot. I don't know a lot of people who like to micromanage others. So having the self-drive, the discipline to get your own work done, to be driving yourself forward without having to have somebody come and check in every day. Hey, are you done this? Hey, where are you doing with that? Did you do it this way? No, you didn't. Well, you should have done it that way. Nobody's going to do that in the teams that I've worked on at WEX. So we really value individuals who they're going about their day and they're checking in, they're making sure they're on the right track, but they're in the driver's seat. They're not waiting for somebody to come and put gas in the car. Second, having excellent time management skills. And it's not just time management, it's also prioritization. So you've got 8 hours in a day, 40 hours in a week. What do you do at that time? There's never going to be an end of tasks, even in your school life. Like there's never an end to all the things you could be doing. The same thing applies in the workplace. Your manager's got things he wants you to do. Your teammates have things that they want you to do. Your customers that you know, depending on how close you are with them, they'll also maybe directly be asking you, hey, can you do this? All of that, how do you prioritize it? And there's a little bit of the software development process that will be prioritizing the actual work items. But on your day-to-day, there's so many little tasks that you don't think about that you need to be prepared to sift through and figure out what is really essential to carry out my duties. Clearly communicate. So you could be the smartest person in the world, but if you can't portray your ideas clearly to others, how are you going to get anything done? And there are maybe exceptions to this. There are highly technical roles where you've got lots of robust requirements coming in, you do the work, you send it away. If you're a very independent worker, this one could be acceptable. But in general, for most roles, people really want you to communicate clearly, especially in the interview process. That's going to come out. If you're having a conversation and they say, hey, how do you think about this problem? Really take a step back, break down the idea and work through it, communicate your ideas clearly. Next, being able to break down complex problems. So it's one thing to be highly skilled in technology areas or highly skilled in any specific discipline, but in general, being able to just take really big problems that some people would say, oh, no, that's impossible. Nobody likes to hear that. So being able to break down those impossible things into more feasible structures, even just that alone is incredibly valuable as a skill. So I think a lot of interview questions revolve around breaking down problems in some capacity. So this will probably also come out through the interview process. And lastly, being excited to collaborate with a team. And again, there are exceptions to this one. There are individual contributor situations where you're not a part of a team, but most roles are a part of a team. And I love the phrase, there are no super chickens. There's a great TED Talk on this if you haven't been exposed to it. I think actually it might have been a part of Kate's program that I went through 2 years ago. But the idea of a super chicken is there's one super producing chicken. It produces the most eggs in a flock. You can't just take each one of those chickens, put them into a coop and say, oh, we 10x'd our egg production. No, you killed all your chickens. They actually killed each other. So being a part of a team will actually be more productive than being a bunch of super chickens killing each other. All right, so moving on, everyone's favorite topic. How did COVID change the workforce? Not beer, sorry. The impact on the workplace, for WEX at least, is that everyone's working from home. That's today, and that's likely going forwards. There will probably be openings of the office for us in the future, but at this point, it's been pretty highly socialized that we don't imagine enforcing full-time in-office work in the next couple of years at least. So there's going to be a lot more flexibility. I see Terry with a reaction there. There's going to be a lot of flexibility going forwards in where we hire people from, how often they need to come to the office. And that's obviously going to be subject to the team, because there are some teams that rely on certain collaborative processes that they're going to hire locally. But WEX in the US, as a general statement, is currently pretty open to the idea of a remote workforce going forwards. Now that leads us to digital transformation. In order to get to that place, we had to do a lot of digital transformation. So when COVID hit us, we came from the office and we all went home. And, and we were like, well, how do we work from home now? All these people have to set up their offices. So between shipping like monitors to people's houses, getting stipends for people to pay for their increased internet needs, like there were tons of changes that we had to make sure that there were digital tools for communicating with each other at work, for dealing with the same problems that we were dealing with in the office. So I think there's just been a ton of digital transformation this year. More specific to hiring, with that idea that we can be remote full-time potentially, we don't have to hire people out of Maine. Now, I know you don't want to hear that, but now we can hire from across the country. So if you want to live in California, but you still want to work in Maine or whatever it is that your life leads you to, now we're just posting jobs as US remote. And again, this could be subject to the team's decision of if they need people to be close, they may choose to hire people in Maine. But again, blanket statement is across the US. Also, all the interview processes are fully virtual, so nobody's going to ask you to come to the WEX headquarters to get interviewed. Lastly, for this one, the days of our hiring freezes are over. I think this is kind of hopefully getting more common everywhere these days. Oh, is that my 5-minute warning? All right, thanks, Derek. So there was a long time where everybody was, oh, we're laying people off because the business is suffering, or oh, we're furloughing people because we don't know how the business is going to do with COVID. For us, at least those days are over, and I hope that for others, we're coming to a brighter future with all that things. I think the general statement is going to be similar from everyone these days, but that was definitely an impact early on with COVID last year, was that a lot of the hiring was slowed down or stopped. So those days are behind us for now. All right, just a very quick breakdown of the HR process at WEX, and this is focused on your perspective. This is ignoring what goes on internally before. We've posted the job, that's the assumption. You would like to apply online. So we've got a website that I have in the slide deck, and I'll share that with Terry so you guys can have some links. But you've applied online. Now that's gonna get screened by somebody in HR. They're gonna review the resume, or maybe potentially, if they're able to, they might do a screening interview with you. And again, that would be virtual. Next, the hiring manager and maybe his or her team will be interviewing you after that screening process. So you've been chosen, you're one of the short list now, and the hiring manager and the team that you might be working with are going to be interviewing you to vet you, to understand the qualities that they're looking for. After that, you'd be getting an offer. If you accept it, then we move on to the background check, and then you'd have to get since we're remote today, you get a computer shipped to you with all the digs, and then it's your first day. So that's the very brief rundown of HR process. How much time do I have left? How many slides do I have? I might whiz through this one here. I think I'm running short on time. So I'm gonna whiz through this one. You guys can take a look. There are some nuances in how you get hired. And this is something I was unfamiliar with. So I thought I'd put it in this deck to be able to talk about it real quick. But an employee versus a contractor versus an intern. For you guys, you're primarily going to be looking probably an employee co-op intern. An intern is our summer internship program. It's 3 months. A co-op is the same kind of pay scale and benefits situation, but it could be much more flexible. You can be working part-time during the school year. You can be doing it for 12 months. Co-op's just a flexible internship. And then an employee is a full-time worker, usually salaried at WEX with benefits and some more protections around that employment role. I'll just skip the contractor for now since it's not very common with us anyways. You guys have this deck later to refer to anyways. When I was a senior, what did I wish I knew? This is less long ago than I'm willing to admit. So you should apply for the job, even if you don't think you're good enough. Sometimes those requirements are more loose than they think. It might have been written by the HR rep instead of the actual hiring manager, and they might have just been bloating those requirements. And that's not always the case. I have a little caveat. You shouldn't apply if you're grossly underqualified. Don't go for the CTO position at the Fortune 500 company if you don't have some experience under your belt, for example. And also with this first one, don't fall prey to imposter syndrome. You have accomplished things, and we all fight ourselves daily. Don't beat yourself up. Don't think that you're worse than you are, because everybody has a different story. Everybody has different things they're good and bad at. So don't think you're not as good as you are, is the general statement of the first one. Second, soft skills matter a lot. How you communicate, how friendly you are, how much you smile, those things add up. They impact people's perception of you. And those perceptions lead to judgments that can make or break your success. I know that that's not always what you want to hear, but being human, being personable can get you a long way as well. So maybe if that's a weak side of yours, think about it a little bit and see how you can shore up that gap for yourself. A job title, third, a job title can mean a lot of different things. There's too many situations that I could go into on this one, and it's going to take all my time if I do that. So a job title has some consistency, like a product manager typically means you're interacting with stakeholders, you're getting metrics, you're defining success for your products, you're owning your product. But the actual day-to-day responsibilities can vary dramatically from company to company or even team to team. So bear in mind that when you see one position at one company and the same thing at another, they might be totally different day-to-day responsibilities. And lastly, having a good manager and good leadership can define your success. So vet your manager like they're vetting you in the interview process. You're not going to want to work for a manager that you don't like for years and years and years. They're going to make your life a mess, and they're not going to give you promotions or raises. So vet your manager like they're vetting you in the interview process. I don't know if how much time do I have? 2 minutes, or am I less than that? I think I'm at time, aren't I? I got 2 slides. Should I finish or? Okay. All right. So I'm going to whirlwind through my story. I have a little sarcastic intro. I was born in Canada. I like to represent Canada up here. But where it begins being relevant here is I started studying computer science at a non-UMaine university. I had a horrifying panic mode where I was like, what am I doing with my life? Why am I spending money on this? And so I ended up changing schools, changing studies, dropping out of school for a year, for a gap year, working in mechanical engineering as a plant technician locally to Maine. Then I was like, I still like technology. So I went back to school, finished the comp sci degree, had a little on-campus dig with ASAP. I don't know if that's still around with Mike Scott. And then I got a couple of internships under my belt with WEX. So they found me my junior year, so my second to last year at UMaine. And then they got me in the summer internship, and then they got me again in spring, and then they got me again this summer after I graduated, which that led to a full-time offering a little later on. And then I transitioned from that role into the product manager role about a year ago. So that's my whirlwind story. I like to share it because it's very non-traditional. So don't feel bad about whatever your story is, whatever age you started going to school, whenever you left or came back or left again, it's all part of your story. And lastly, and again, this will be shared, so these links, you can actually click on them. I have 3 positions open on my team or in my organization. I have a site reliability engineer, DevOps engineer, and a product manager co-op. And then there's also a link to all the WEX job postings at the bottom of this. And similar to, I think, as Jen said, all of our internships are filled for the summer internship program, which is pretty fun at WEX. But 2022 will be coming later this year. So keep your eyes out. All right. I don't know if I have time for questions. I think I went over. Sorry about that.
That's all right. We got a little time. So I have 2 questions on the chat for you, Brent. First is from Max. Can you briefly explain your role as a product manager at WEX? You said it had many titles or many different hats that you wear, and the team that you work with. What do you personally like and dislike about being a product manager? I guess that's 3 different questions, but.
All right, that's it's gonna be like 10 minutes for me to answer this. Yeah, have to keep me honest here, Terry. So first off, we said, what is a product manager? What does that mean? So for me, at least, the product manager at its highest level is you want to own the success of a product. That means you need to make sure you're choosing to work on products that are meaningful. So you're identifying the value stream of that product. You're finding who matters in that product, your stakeholders or your end users, and you're trying to understand how you can win them over. But also make sure that you can deliver on the value, because that could be value to your company, that could be money that you're generating, that could be savings that you're generating. So you're in the business world, you're in the client satisfaction world. I mean, people typically generate it into like experience, business, and technology. The intersection of those things is another way of classifying that. But I'm rambling, and this is why I'm trying to stay within my time box, come back to the purpose. What a product manager does is they launch products. So they find the vision for it, they launch it, they get the team, they drive the team, they make sure that the product is successful. So they're really just like a road paver for the product. Now, at different companies, that might be more technical, that might be less technical. They might be writing technical requirements, or they might just be saying, here are the like 1-sentence summaries of what needs to be achieved. And we've got 5 goals for this product, but that product takes 5 years to build. And so you really didn't define anything technical about it in some cases. But for me, I'm much more of a technical product manager. I take these big ideas, I drill them down, document streams, make sure that the requirements are clear, work with the team, work with the stakeholders to build it, to deliver it, to iterate on it. Kind of a cross between a product manager, product owner, business analyst. That's me, but that's only my experience. And I'm totally blanking. What was the second or third part of that question? Because I think I totally missed part of it.
What does your team look like, and what do you like and dislike about your job?
My team, we have 3 sub-teams underneath my organization. My organization that I am product manager for is called Enterprise Architecture. We have a team called SBS, or acronymed as SBS, a team called CBS, and a team called SRE. SRE is Site Reliability Engineering. They're kind of like a shared resource pool, and they maintain that the products have happy customers. Anything goes down, they're the first line of defense. They're our L1, L2 support basically, and they're attacking the problems as they happen proactively sometimes, reactively other times. Our other 2 teams are dev teams. One of them focuses on vendor solutions. So they go out, they find vendor solutions as we find them, and they work to bring those in, build governance, maintain them. They're the behind the scenes support for the real problems, the upgrades, the maintenance, the feature adds. And then the other team is a build shop. So they actually do all of the custom development. We'll build microservices as we need them. So that's like the high level view of what my team looks like. And then lastly, what do I like and dislike? I mean, I come from a technical background. I used to lead engineers. Now I'm kind of in the business world. That was a big change. I'm not saying I dislike it, but it's a lot of change to deal with. So I've only been doing this. Well, I've been managing products in some capacity, but more on a technical side for a long time. But I've only been doing this business world product management for about a year now. So I still struggle for sure with not being able to be in the weeds, like having to let things go, let decisions go that I don't have control over. I just need to focus on making sure that the value is clear, representing the stakeholders to the developers, making sure that the story that the user needs is clear, and then vetting that the clients are happy. So I have a hard time staying in that world. It's my biggest dislike, but I mean, I have nothing to say but good things everywhere else. I mean, I love seeing products go from a little seed of an idea all the way to somebody's happy using it. So nothing but good things to say about that part of the process. All right, I'm sure I could drone on for hours here, but I think Terry's gonna hurt me if I keep doing that.
No, we'll have time later for questions and answers as well as to the whole panel. But also, if any of you have extra time afterwards to meet with some of our students, we'll switch to breakout rooms after the class is over, and you guys can get one-on-one with some of our students that may have individual questions. So at this point, thank you, Brent. You can free up the screen, that'd be great, and we'll move on. Our third and final speaker on the panel is Greg Tehanepi. Greg is from the Jackson Laboratory. For those of you who are, most of us are Mainers, so most of us remember that the Jackson Laboratory makes some of the finest mice in the world, the most expensive mice in the world. They have recently opened a production facility in Ellsworth to match their research facility out in Bar Harbor. Greg is I'm going to get this wrong, so I'm not even going to try. The Associate Director of Software Development, something like that. Greg will correct me on this one. He's spoken to my class in the past, and I welcome him back to speak to us. One thing that I should mention is the Jackson Laboratories, and we have an employee-owned organization. We have WEX, which is a financial technology firm, and the Jackson Laboratory is a nonprofit, 501c3. So, Greg, all yours.
Super, thanks, Terry. Just let me get my screen set up here so I can see folks in a chat. And I'll say, so my title is Associate Director of Operations in Computational Sciences. So I actually don't directly manage software engineers, but I certainly work with them quite a bit. Now let me find my chat. Oh, well, we'll worry about that later. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today from a little bit different angle than Jen or Brent. Although you're going to hear some definitely some repeating themes here. There we go. Let me reset my timer. I'm going to come at this a little bit more from the career perspective of things, although I will talk about what it's involved in getting a job, because obviously that's what you folks are interested in. But I'm going to also talk to you about a little longer timescales, about career, about the thought processes there. So the first question that comes to my mind is like, why would you want a career in computing? Well, a lot of people think, well, it's a great way to make money. They're some of the highest paying jobs around. So suitcases full of cash is why I want to be in computing. Another possibility might be that I want to work from anywhere. I want to be able to work from any location, presuming that it has a decent internet connection. And that these days, especially following the pandemic, is very much the case. You can work in a lot of different places. One of our youngest and brightest engineers who came to us through an internship out of college, she just recently picked up and moved to Madison, Wisconsin, because she wanted something different. So you can work different places. Maybe you come into it because you really want a really sick computer setup. You want to have a totally cool environment that you work in. That's I have a pretty cool setup too. I can switch cameras later, but I've got like recording equipment and instruments and stuff. And for the people who work remotely, that's certainly possible. But for those folks in computing who have to work, for example, as Jen mentioned, on site somewhere, well, there's some pretty cool environments there too. I worked in data centers for early part of my career, and those are pretty interesting environments. Although they're not really built for humans, they're built for machines. So they're really cold and they're really loud. But other than that, they're a cool place to work. All of those are like real reasons you might want to get into computing. But really, there's some more important things you might want to think about in the long term. And there's a fairly a famous person made this statement: your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work, and the only way to do great work is to love what you do. And a reasonably successful computer person by the name of Steve Jobs is the source of that quote. So. And I'm sure you can watch other stuff online, etc., that will talk to you about the importance of liking what you do and how perhaps that's more important than anything else. But there are realities in life, of course. So as you move into the computing field, here are some things to think about. And actually, over time, as you think about your career, you might shift into different careers. You look at Brent. Brent started out in a technical role, and he's now shifting into more of a business role. So already his world is changing a little bit. So here are some of the things to think about, though. I found this a really interesting graphic. There's what you love, there's what you're good at, there's what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. And the suggestion here is that you somehow want to have a balance of these four aspects. Fortunately, in the field of computing, what you can be paid for is not too much of a problem. Generally speaking, you can be paid pretty well for computing jobs, assuming, and that does assume that you are good at it. As Brent and Jen have mentioned, you have to be able to do things. You have to get work done. What the world needs, computing, you can apply your skills and talents and energy around computing to, like at the Jackson Laboratory, helping us figure out how to cure diseases and improve human health. Or you could potentially, use those skills to figure out how to put rabbit ears on me in a Zoom meeting. And those are both valid uses of technology. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but when you choose to, when you think about what you want to do with your skills, there might be some consideration in the long run, at least, as to what you're, what you feel like you're contributing back. So finding a balance between these things is interesting and sometimes tricky. I have a bunch of other things, for example, that I love and that I'm good at. I'm not sure I can get paid for them, and I don't know if the world needs them, but I like to brew beer. I've done semi-professional photography. I've done a lot of music. I grow a lot of plants, all of which potentially could have been careers for me, but aren't. I ended up with computing. So now I'm going to switch a little bit more to the practical here. Jackson Laboratory. I'm not going to go into history of JAX, but we like most companies, virtually everyone these days uses online for people to find and apply to our jobs. And there's no way of saying it. The online applications for jobs are annoying, and that's being polite. I mean, they really are horrible. It's just a horrible process to go through, but that's what you do. You click the button, you apply, and you fill out the form, and you send in your resume, and hopefully a cover letter. Please, cover letters make a pretty big difference, at least in my world. If I just get I don't know why you're interested, so tell me why. Then of course there's a resume. So as someone who's looked at, oh God, I don't know how many resumes, it's one of the most important things to do in a resume, from my perspective, is you've got folks who are looking at these hundreds or thousands of them. You actually want to have less, or you don't want to crowd your resume. Your resume should really have very high quality information in it, and white space is okay. Like just looking at this sample resume, for example, that doesn't look too bad. I definitely want to know what your background, your training, education, your skills and experience are. But when I'm scanning the resume, I want to know, I'm trying to figure out attitude. What is this person, what have they done in the past that tells me something about their attitude? And both Brent and I think Jen mentioned this as well. Attitude's really important. Does the person have initiative? As Brent was saying, are they sort of self-motivated, self-organized? Do they lean forward? Are they adaptable? Is this somebody who clearly can handle challenges or changes? Can they learn new things? Do they have curiosity? This is really critical. Like, I want to talk to somebody who's hopelessly curious and just is constantly trying to figure out new stuff. And then this idea of quality of information is high signal to noise ratio, and something from engineering. You want to have as much good information with as little crappy information as possible. Don't put stuff in your resume unless you think it's really going to be valuable. And as far as I'm concerned, it's fine to customize your resume. It's extra work, but it's fine to customize it for specific applications. Where would I suggest you go looking for stuff? I would say LinkedIn is my current favorite. And LinkedIn has a pretty good algorithm for figuring out what you might be interested in based on what you browse, it would appear, because I seem to get pretty good recommendations. And you might be wondering, Greg, you've been at the Jackson Lab for 26 or 7 years now. Why do you look at jobs? I look at jobs all the time, because I've discovered that over time, and in any position, if you're going to be aware of opportunities, or if you have that really bad day and you're like, oh, God, I hate this place, I need to go somewhere else, then you already know what's out there. It's like takes away the grass is greener thing all the time and gives you a sort of a balance. So at any rate, LinkedIn is what I would recommend for that. Internships, you'll notice internships got mentioned by both Jen and Brent was a perfect lead in for this, in that he did 3 internships with WEX. When internships, I realize those of you who are graduating right now, that might be a little tough because you kind of want to go straight into a full-time position. But for those of you who might be on the call that are not graduating and have time to do internships, they're super productive. They're great for you. You learn so much. And then you also potentially end up like Brent did, ending up in a full-time role in that company. And two of our top folks in our group right now both came to us through internships. So I really can't recommend that enough. Then you have the interview process. Now I picked this particular image of an interview for a really important reason. And if you look carefully at the 3 people in this picture, and I assume the woman on the right is the applicant, and the guy and the woman on the left are the interviewers. she seems like she's sort of in control of this situation, right? She's the one who appears to be driving the conversation. And the point for me about this is that interviews go both ways. I think maybe it was Jen who said this, but to me, an interview is 50-50. It's just as much your 50% of your time to ask the company about whatever it is you need to know about as it is that for them to ask you things. And as an interviewer, one of the things that really concerns me is someone who just sort of sits passively on the other side of the conversation and doesn't ask me any questions. And then I always reserve time for someone to ask questions explicitly. And if they have none, I'm kind of like, well, what? Well, how is it somebody looking at this job and doesn't have any questions? It doesn't. In fact, and the flip side, I've had 2 interviews in the past year where I had to fight to get a word in edgewise, and they were fantastic interviews. I mean, these people came with fantastic questions, and I learned so much more by the questions they asked than the questions I asked. So do your homework. What is the health of the organization? Find out more what, both Jen and Brent have shared information about their orgs that's, I bet you a large chunk of it is online. So go find out about the cultures of these organizations, find out about how old they are, how are they financially structured, how many postings do they have, what do they look, if you're really interested in the organization, do some homework, and that will then be the basis by which you can ask some questions in the interview. Ask about the supervisor and team. Brent mentioned this, like you don't want to work for a person you don't like, right? So this is your chance. You ask the team, hey, how do you like your supervisor? Don't be afraid to ask us a little bit of an edgy question. That's fine. And then ask the supervisor, hey, how's your team going? What do they do well? And you can also ask to both groups, how many people have left and joined in the last year? Get some sense of turnover, are people coming and going a lot, or are they hanging around? Any rate, hopefully you get the idea here that you really want to use. The interview is such a short period of time, even if it's a half day or a full day, it's still in a remarkably short period of time for an organization to understand an individual and an individual to understand the organization. So it's super valuable time. Thinking a little bit more back on the whole career idea. So this is something you don't have to have, you have to have some kind of answer for. It doesn't have to be a answer or an answer, I should say. It doesn't have to be super involved. One of my favorite questions to ask people is, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? And I really almost don't care what they say with respect to the position they're applying to. That's a little bit of an overstatement. But my point is, what I really want to hear is, have they thought about it, right? Has somebody thought about where they're going, what they might do? Sometimes people will go, yeah, I've thought about this and that, but I just really don't know. I'm really just looking to learn more at the moment. I'm like, fine, at least you thought about it, right? So think a little bit about where things are going. The other thing is, you'll notice this woman has got 3 different arrows ahead of her, and supposedly, people have something like 11 or 12 jobs in their lives, and they have 2 or 3 different career changes. That's fairly normal. Brent has already gone through one of the ones that I wanted to make sure people were aware of, and that is, you start off as a coder, you start off as a technical person, you can be good at it. In fact, invariably, the people who are really good technical people are asked to manage people. And it's like, because you're really good at what you do, so why wouldn't you be able to do that? Well, managing people is so much different than writing great code. I mean, it's like a different set of skills, and it can be fantastic. It can be wonderful. I mean, you can have a great team and it's super rewarding. You'll probably need to learn some new skills along the way. However, I walked past one of my boss's office one day, and this is what I saw. And this was after I'd already managed people at this time, and I had a pretty good idea of why his head was on his desk. Managing people also can, unfortunately, give you some very, very challenging moments in life. And if you're not prepared for those, then maybe think twice about going into the management role. Now, like at Jax has parallel tracks. You can get very senior in a purely technical, non-supervisory role. So you can get very senior. You can get slightly more senior if you go on the management side, but at any rate, just be aware of that. Wrapping up here, you guys, you're walking into a pretty amazing environment in an amazing field. I mean, software developers are highly in demand, highly compensated. this is not you're in a good spot, all things considered, even considering the pandemic, number 2 job out of the 100 best. And if you look at the future, it's only going to get better. I mean, the future just looks better and better. So you're in a good spot. Lastly, a couple things to think about. Be organized. This stands for getting things done, which was a method that's been out for 10 or 15 years. But as I think it was Brent said, just be organized, know how to do your work, know what your priorities are. Learn what it means to manage people's expectations, your boss's expectations in particular. You'll be happier, you'll be more successful if you understand what that's about. Think about continuing your education. Advanced degrees are, at least in my field, in my area, advanced degrees are gold. And in some cases, like I don't have an advanced degree, and that's been a ceiling for me. So think about that. Here's one. How about learn to watch out for your cubic centimeter of chance. Things float by you in life. And if you're not looking for them as an opportunity, you'll miss them. So you have to cultivate this mindset of like, ooh, I wonder if that might be, wonder what that is. So cubic centimeter chance, push yourself. This is something, it took me way too long to learn. Push yourself and push others, push everything. Don't be comfortable. Don't just sit in your happy place. And don't be afraid to take a little bit of a risk. And lastly, computing careers are not good for your health. They are just not good for your health. I didn't discover this till I was 40. But man, you have to figure out how to, in particular, try to move a half an hour a day. Otherwise you're going to not be happy later. You really do need to make sure you take care of yourself, eat well, etc. So with that, I'll say thank you very much. And I can be found at the jax.org address here. Our jobs are online at www.jax.org. I'm on LinkedIn happy to connect up with folks. So I'll end there.
Oh, thanks so much, Greg. I guess we have a question on the chat. It has more perhaps to do with JAX than it does with your presentation. How much freedom do researchers really have to pursue what they want to do with the research? Where does JAX get involved in that process, and how do they get involved?
JAX scientists, the folks at JAX who run their own labs, these are the faculty at JAX and who acquire their own, or they apply for and acquire their own funding, whether it's NIH or NSF or foundations or whatever. Those folks have pretty much complete freedom. I mean, they're their own, they live and die by their own ability to get funding, basically. They are not paid by JAX per se. They need to get funding in order to continue their careers in their labs. So their freedom is pretty close to complete. There are certain realistic limitations within which what kinds of research can be done at JAX, for example, right? We're not going to be doing research with rabbits, although sometimes that gets pushed, there are some people who've played with yeast or other things, but at any rate, so quite a lot. Where does JAX get involved in that process, and how do they get involved? JAX sometimes has its own internal funding sources and will fund JAX and will fund research on its own. And in those cases, JAX has more influence over what kinds of research is done. Also, if there are large center grants where one faculty member, or say six faculty member all come together to make a center grant, because it's tied to the institution, sometimes there's a little less flexibility there. Is there an education initiative at JAX? Are there any benefits that help workers keep up with new technologies and educate themselves to stay relevant? Well, JAX has an education department, but that's not quite what you're talking about, because that's for folks outside of JAX, and it's sort of pre-docs, postdocs. Actually, it's K through postdocs. We do all kinds of education, but that I don't think is what the question is. JAX does have educational benefits in the sense that JAX will cover, I think, couple $1,000s a year, I want to say. I mean, basically one course a year they will cover towards continuing education. There are also some programs that JAX has with various institutions to do collaborations. So that we have some educational initiatives, but I wouldn't call them massive. For example, our wellness programs are probably around health and wellness are probably a little bit stronger. but Jack certainly cares about ongoing, it supports ongoing education.
All right. Well, I said we would take 2 questions, and those are them. We have a few minutes left in the class to ask questions for the entire panel. And so I'll be looking for those in the chat room. In the meantime, I have a question for the panel. One of the things all 3 of you mentioned was that in an interview or once you get past human resources, your resume gets you through human resources to in front of the hiring manager. You said soft skills matter, that attitude, motivation, and curiosity matter. Can you think of an example, each one of you, can you think of an example of an interview that you went through, either your own or somebody else's, where somebody, how do you you can't fake attitude. So how do you detect attitude? What is it that you're looking for? And what would you like to see expressed in an interview or from an interviewee, from a candidate?
I can take the lead. I can kick off on this answer, which is specific examples. Specificity is so key. Being able to talk and communicate about a situation that you found yourself in, a conflict with a coworker, an example of where you took leadership or initiative on a team, an example of coming up against something and you were stuck and you weren't sure how to proceed. Like, walk us through the scenario and be specific. That is just really helpful to understand what the problem was, how you solved it, and what you got at, how you came out on the other side of it. And I think anytime you can use an example in your life, bringing, 3 to 4 of those in your kind of interview toolkit is really helpful. And the more you have conversations with people, and this is where informational interviewing is so helpful, just to gain some confidence in talking about your history, your experience and skills. Even if you're coming in and you don't have a lot of work experience, talk about group projects, talk about assignments, talk about relationships with professors or faculty. All of that counts. All of those experiences count. And that's what I like to see.
Greg?
So, I think the case of what I look for is somebody who's not just like, who has a sheet of canned responses. You can tell the folks because they kind of almost like they're running from a script in their head. You'll ask a question and they'll start rattling off an answer that seems like it's pretty well rehearsed and practiced, and those are probably okay in small amounts. But if I get the sense that the person's not listening and engaging, that's the kind of thing that that is always a concern. And as Jen mentions, there are interviewing techniques that are really designed to pull out what you've actually done as opposed to what you would do, right? Because the studies have shown that what you actually have done in the past is the best indicator of what you might do in the future. It's called behavioral interviewing, if I'm remembering correctly. And so whenever you can provide examples of what you've done in certain situations, that's always, I think, a benefit, because it's clear that you're not imagining something, you're actually explaining something you did.
Brent, I think you're up.
All right, last one here. I'll go through 2, I guess, very short examples. I think I'm going to repeat what Greg said about scripted answers. They can be pretty obvious. I mean, I've had a 5-minute answer from 2 different candidates, and one of them gave me a 5-minute monologue where it was like nobody was in the room. Like, they were just quoting from the textbook, like reading off of a webpage on the side or the textbook in the corner, just reading like, this is the process. And that doesn't really tell me what you want to do, what you're good at. It wasted 5 minutes of both of our time at the end of the day. But that same scenario where that participant took 5 minutes walking me through their process, maybe engaging me and talking me through like, here's how I would approach, like actually like walking through an interactive example. That same 5 minutes, that they could be talking the whole time still, but if they're not just like reading monotonously through a blanket process and they're actually like engaging with the example, then that's very, very obvious the difference between those 2 worlds. And for attitude, I mean, smile, it goes a long way. Even if you don't feel happy, if you sit there, no smile on your face, kind of talking in monotone the whole time, it probably doesn't reflect well on your energy to start that career. So even if that's not you all the time, it's going to come out as a judgment in that interviewer at least. So.
Okay, here's one from Lisa. How does someone who is dispassionate about computing work but has aptitude for it show themselves to be good potential employee material? Greg, let's start with you, and then Brent, and then Jen. Well, you have the very nice Venn diagram of this is what I'm good at, but maybe it's not what I love. You know, I'm just.
Well, so dispassionate about computing work. So I think that, boy, that's a tough one, because now you're suggesting I would say, yes, you should continue looking for work that you'd not really like, which is a little bit rugged. But I think, I mean, there are realities in life. I mean, there's been periods of time when I've had to do work that I didn't like. That's why it's called work. There's no job is perfect. Brent's laughing, but yeah, every job has some kind of component to it that's not good. I mean, and there are times when maybe you trade off your passion about the work for some of the other components of the diagram, right? Because frankly, you need to get paid. You need to pay the bills, and you're good at it, and maybe you are doing something that's useful to humanity, or you think is being useful to the world in some way. And if you're not super passionate about it at the moment, that's not the end of the world. I guess what I would say is, then that's when you need to be looking, though, and figuring out how can I transition this towards something that is going to be something I'm more passionate about, and try and figure out where to go.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a hard time giving this a direct answer as well, without some interpretation. How do you show yourself to be a good potential employee while being dispassionate? So you're looking for a job you're already not passionate about. That's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. So I'm gonna have a hard time answering that at face value. If I interpret that a little bit and just say like you're kind of lost, or you don't really know what you'd be passionate about, then I guess that's just a part of the process. Like I interviewed for a product manager position, and I came from an engineering background. It was kind of just an opportunity that struck me at work. It's not like I was like, yes, I'm jumping ship, I want to go and be this. It's more like, well, you've got to choose a new opportunity, and this one's there. So I went for it, and I'm enjoying it. So I don't regret my decision to take that opportunity. But I guess in some ways I might not have been passionate about it. But that comes back to Greg's example of work. Sometimes you don't enjoy 100%, but you can enjoy 70% of it. And I mean, maybe you get some flexibility from that position. Maybe you get money from that position. So I guess those are the other facets of the question. But I do have a hard time trying to answer this question at the face value, which is you probably shouldn't be looking for a position in something that you're not passionate about.
I agree wholeheartedly. And part of that is it will come through. It comes through in conversations in your interviews. People who might have the aptitude and the skill set to do it, but they're just not passionate about the role or not passionate about the culture. Dispassion comes through, and our hiring managers and our team and leadership here, and I can tell on the phone screen when somebody's really kind of dispassionate and disengaged also. And so I don't have a straight answer similar to Brent, but we can tell. Yeah.
So as the capstone instructor, I'll chime in just a tiny little bit and to say that there are a lot of companies out there. For those of you who joined us for this panel, we have 3 different companies from very different sectors. In the previous panel, we had companies such as the Naval Undersea Warfare Center, Texas Instruments, and a startup company here in Maine. So there are a lot of companies out there. You can find the computing that you have are tools. The company has a mission, and looking for the mission that goes along where you can apply your tools can make all the difference. So that's my 2 cents on that. We are at 4:43 at this point. If any students want to stick around afterwards, we'd like to ask our speakers to join us and we'll put them in breakout rooms so you can have individual questions about to any of our speakers. I'd like to give the last few minutes, a 1 minute or 45-second, whatever, final thoughts. We'll go through the order that we went through the speakers again: Jen Hughes, Brent Wilson, and Greg Tehanepi. Jen?
I would just echo, stay really curious. I love that just analogy of the centimeter, the cube. It's just be really curious. You never know what conversation and what connection will kind of lead you down your path. And I think having a real open mind, because there's careers that we're not even talking about that will exist in 9 months from now. So just continuing to be really deeply curious.
Yeah, I'm kind of going to take the last part of what you just said there and expand on it a little bit here. These opportunities that you're looking for, I mean, I know it's hard, at least it was for me. If it wasn't for you, congratulations. It's hard to understand what job you want when you're sitting in college. You're learning all these individual disciplines and skills. What does that mean? What is a product owner? What is a software engineer? What do they actually do? How do I apply these skills? What's my daily life going to be like? You don't understand. I still don't understand any of that about some roles at my company, and I work here. So don't try to look 7 years in the future and say, that's where I want to be. Look 2 years in the future and say, I think I could do that. Take that chance, see where it goes, be agile, iterate. I mean, it's all built into the framework. Just, be Scrum in your daily life and find the next opportunity if the first one doesn't work out. So take a chance is my wish for you guys.
Greg?
So I'll disagree a little bit with Brent about the 7 years. I'll say it's okay to look at 7. Just be willing to change any point. It's not a final. You're not making a one-time decision here. In fact, that's something I frequently say to people in and out of work. People seem to often think that this decision in front of them is a one-shot deal that they don't get to make again. And it's pretty rare, actually, that the decision in front of you is a one-shot deal. Like most decisions can be changed or paths can be changed. So don't feel like there's this gigantic, oh my God, I have to get it right this one time or something. That's not the way it works. You're going to have a lot of flexibility. You're lucky to be in this field that does have a lot of opportunity. The whole pandemic, I didn't really talk about the pandemic, but it's super. For us, we were already starting to move towards remote work and hiring people remotely, and the pandemic just put that to 150 miles an hour, and we'll hire anybody. We're pretty much open anywhere in the US now. Yes, that does, it opens up Maine jobs to people outside of Maine, but it also gives you a range of opportunities that are just, they just weren't even close to what it was 18 months ago. You can now work almost anywhere in the US probably. So that's super exciting. Take advantage of it.
All right, so to my class, I realize most of you are muted, but we have reactions. I'd like to thank our panelists so much for their time, for their comments, for their insights. We're very grateful for the input. My class is always asking for the real world to come into our classroom, and I'm grateful that you were able to bring it to us. Stick around, please, speakers and students, if you want to speak to our any of our speakers. Kate or Mariah or somebody will be handling putting people into the breakout rooms. All right. Thanks so much, everybody.